Hey everyone, just a quick thing at the top for what you're going to be hearing. This is a wrap-up episode that we are doing for the Fallout campaign. Obviously, there's going to be massive spoilers for the Fallout Evergreen campaign, so if you haven't heard it yet, or you haven't finished it yet, or for some reason this is what you're starting with, don't go back and listen to it, because we discuss the events and like character things and big plot points, and you probably shouldn't ruin it for yourself. Also, because this was just kind of like us having a discussion, there are some audio issues. There might be some babies crying in the background or dogs barking, and I tried to eliminate as much of that stuff as I could, but hopefully it doesn't bother you or detract. It's just, life happens, and we were just kind of like having a friendly discussion. So anyway, hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Respect the Crit. I'm your host, Ian Duncan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined by some incredible players and some incredible friends. Please welcome Xavier Trudeau-Deschênes.
Hello, my good friends. This is Xavier. I've been playing Lance Burnett this whole time. It was me. And my pronouns are he, him, and I'm looking forward to discuss this whole adventure we've had together. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, and on this wild ride with us has been and always will be Susan Spenader.
Hi, I'm Susan Spenader. I go by she, her, and I played Gerry. I miss her, that little nomadic survivor of the waste.
Also here to talk along with us is Jamie Lee-Bonés.
Hello, I am Jamie. She, her. I played Trish, the NCR Ranger.
And of course, none other than our overseer, the one who has put this world together, Alex Herrera.
Hello, I am Alex. He, him. I was and will always be the overseer of this vault.
We're all here. We're obviously our Fallout Evergreen campaign has ended, and we're just going to be here talking a little bit about what we thought of the system, highlights from our campaign, like maybe what was challenging for us, maybe the ways in which our characters changed or the story changed, or things that we did or said or thought that never actually made it onto the show. And and an opportunity to answer some of the questions that people have sent in, some of listener questions. I said this when the episode came out, but I'll say it again here. Like, I'm just really proud of how this turned out, and I'm really proud of this story and everything that we did with it. It started as a sort of hiatus, I guess. I think as we went into this, like, that's kind of how I thought, is like, oh, this will just be like a brief hiatus, but that's not what it turned into. I don't think. Like, it really turned into something that we were all like very strongly invested in, and almost immediately too. Yeah, I'm super proud of it.
It was fun. I think I kept flip-flopping. I was like, well, maybe not this, maybe this other game, maybe we just do D&D. No, maybe we do this. And then I think I got the email from Modiphius like, oh, your book is coming soon. I'm like, no, we're doing it. That's the one I want to do. This is it. And I had been playing a lot of Fallout 4, I think, at the time, too. I was, like, back on the game.
Then that was kind of the inspiration, is just sort of, like, getting back into Fallout. And I mean, the tabletop game was coming out around that time. So, like, when we started this, which was, like, 9 months ago? I think we've been doing this for about 9 months.
I can tell you when I started writing the Spiderweb.
Well, my daughter is almost 8 months old. So.
Oh, yeah.
So we've started prepping for...
I started writing this...
It can't be a year, right?
It's not a year. Yeah, it's under a year, but it's about 9 months is when I think we start doing a session 0. And
I built the original campaign outline July 2nd of 2021. That's like the outline, the skeletal outline.
Although that was definitely the right choice for the system and the story, because just the way you're talking about New Vegas and the way Ian and Susan know the game, like I'm the outsider. I don't know about you, Jamie. I don't know how well versed in Fallout you are. But I'm not.
A little
at
bit.
all.
I've played some of the games here and there. I've watched Julian play quite a bit.
Kind of same. Like I've played Fallout 3, but my biggest problems in video games is sandboxes or like open worlds. I get too sidetracked and I can't finish them. I end up just not playing them. Not because I don't like them, but something else happens or a new game comes out. And I'm like, well, I'm just not playing it anymore. But yeah, Fallout has always been like, I've purchased many, but I've played few. So it was fun to actually play it as a tabletop game because now I actually got to play Fallout for the first time, basically. I had a blast. I love the world, the gimmicks, the setting, the weapons, the like. I love the setting, despite not really playing the game itself.
Well, that's also another thing too. Was the setting is like, it's a place that hasn't been thoroughly or like officially explored in the video games. So
it's just mentioned in rumors.
Yeah, it's mentioned in some of the notes, but they also like the rumor was they were going to do like a specific region of the Pacific Northwest. And that's kind of where I got a lot of snippets for the names. Like The Cause is an organization that existed in, I guess, I'm not sure if it's fanfic or official fiction that was written about the Pacific Northwest, but it's completely different than what it was in our campaign.
That's what I thought was really cool about this campaign is like you sort of drilled into the Pacific Northwest, which I love. Like that's where I grew up, and so I was like super thrilled that you decided to choose that. You were able to really like make that something new that still felt like it belonged in Fallout.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. I was worried about that the whole time.
Playing, and if I can add, just playing with Google Maps on top of
Yes.
it to situate ourselves was a blast.
I love that.
was
I wish
so
I could have made
thrilling.
more maps. Like I think I told you guys this. The minute I made the first one, I was like, they're gonna want a map every fucking time.
No,
Yeah.
I
Spoiler,
really
I can
love
do it.
pulling up Google Maps. Now I have all these like hearts in Seattle, like
Seattle.
The museum. Like,
We're gonna have to go to Seattle, guys.
I
Yeah,
want to.
see all
Yeah,
these
I want to go.
places.
I definitely want to go. It's funny too. Like I've only been to Seattle once. I think Seattle proper one time, and it was a long time ago. So I didn't really know. I didn't really have a lot of experience. I was literally going to Google Street View every now and then. Like, okay, what is in this area? If a bomb exploded near here, which is a terrible way to think about a city and like what would happen.
but
Like,
you have
what
to
would
in
survive?
Fallout.
Yeah, Fallout. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what would survive? What would happen to this? And I kind of just tried to think what it would look like, just to give myself the kind of like inspiration. You know, what would this look like? That's where I came up with a lot of the visual settings or the descriptors that I try to come up with.
The gum wall was like one of those things
Oh,
that was like
yeah.
pulled so specifically from Seattle, and like you gave it that like Fallout radiation. You irradiated it with your idea, and it was really cool, you know.
Whatever I pulled for Seattle had to exist in this 1940s branch timeline. I would try and do some sort of like bastardized version of it. Like the gum wall, for example, in the original story was that it formed because of a movie theater or something was doing a premiere across the street, and like they were trying to get it would just be like moviegoers would leave their gum on the wall or something like that. Something was really benign type of start. So I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but like, what would happen in the Fallout world if this happened? They're probably testing some sort of gum that has like nuclear radiation in it.
Oh, it glows. It makes your mouth glow.
Yeah, it's glow in the dark. Perfect for the movie theater. So,
Yeah.
yeah, right? And so like I was trying to think about that, and I was like, well, also just to give it that weird like original Fallout 2 twist is that like, oh, every time somebody's eating and puts it on the wall, that's their spit, that's their DNA on the wall. Which is why it said all those things it said before, like, oh, we collect. We are always together, because it's
I
literally-
love that boss. It was so
Yeah.
Cthulhian. I loved it.
Cthulhian, I think, is the right word too, because they even have like Lovecraft ideas pulled from it, like that are borrowed from very explicitly in certain dungeons and things.
It's in the book. There's a whole, they talk about it in the book, in the campaign book. I was like, oh, they mention it.
And speaking of the campaign book, so the system that we played is the Modiphius 2D20 system. Obviously, it's been modified for the Fallout game, but this 2D20 system is Modiphius's it's kind of their system. It's a system for a lot of their other games, their Mutant Year Zero game, some of the other video game stuff that they've done, like Dishonored. So it's kind of like their system, and I've really wanted to play this system, and that's why I'm really glad that you chose it, Alex. And I think this is a new system to all of us, right? This is a system that we've all played this. We played this for the first time. Let's just kind of go around and like give our sort of impressions about the system. I guess we'll start with you, Alex, since you probably had the most time with it, studying it and sort of like making sure you had all the rules and stuff. So what do you think about this Modiphius 2D20 system?
It was pretty simple to grasp, I think, but that's because of all of us here have background in studying a lot of RPG or D&D for a long, long time, or other RPGs, whatever. For me, the minute we ran the first game, I was like, okay, it's just story, and then if something needs to happen, I'll just refer to the rules. It was very easy to build the actions around the narratives that were happening in the game. The system itself lends itself, I think, in that way, where you can play basically as if you're just chatting, telling a story, and the people who are listening to the story are also involved in creating the story, collaborative storytelling. And it's very easy to instantly get into like, okay, well, you're going to talk to this person, so roll this, or, well, you're looking for clues, so why don't you roll this? The hardest part for me, though, was one thing I really wanted to get into was scavenging. But the campaign itself, we didn't really do that. That wasn't an aspect of the character's main thought process or their motivation.
It didn't serve the plot.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. The fact that we're doing a show alters kind of what we can do with the system. Because there's so much that lends itself to a really slow-paced, I guess, in-person game that's not recorded, that you can't go over those lists.
A survival game.
That was,
a survival game, exactly.
Those mechanics, too. Those were big ones that I skipped.
Yeah, and we had kind of an adventure story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to like just play it at home as a survival game, because there's so much you can do, so much stuff. Just the scavenging, the weapon mods, and like so many granular items from the game that you could just mix and match or play with. The drugs and the stuff like that. The food.
Drugs,
We didn't touch the food at all, but like there's so many buffs and radiation and stuff like that we didn't touch on really. And I just want to go back to it at some point more casually.
I feel the same way. Like we barely scratched the surface on some of the mechanics that you can do within the system, which it's so in depth. And I really love systems like that. That's like the Edge of the Empire system, and like the system, like it has all that crunch if you want it. Like, if you want to have that crunch in your game, it's got it. It can be as crunchy as you want. But the dice system and the engaging with the mechanics really lends itself to being as light and supporting a narrative storytelling. So, like, you can have it any way you want it. And I really love systems that are like that.
I loved how easy it was to pick up. Like, game 0, we were ready to roll. Like, it was just like it seemed intimidating at first, but then it was just like, roll 2 dice. There you go. Is it in the threshold? Okay.
It seemed really intimidating on paper. Like reading it, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to remember this. When we did it, I was like, oh, this is so intuitive and easy. Like it was actually very easy to do.
The customization in this system is just, you get the skills that you're still limited, like in your max skill points you can put, but it's still so varied. And then the perks, you get to pick 1 perk per level. That's great. I love that. I love like this granular character building.
I think the only thing that ever like didn't fully translate for me was the rolling for the body parts. I think it's supposed to simulate VATS, the VAT system in the game, right?
Yeah.
It never felt like that, never translated for me 100%. I think we did a pretty good job of always like remembering that step. And then, of course, Jamie and Susan, you just had like a feature that let you not have to think about it. And that almost felt like a grace, like just not having to think about having to do this extra step of like, oh, where do I hit? I don't know. I get why they did it, because I like having all the modular armor everywhere. And so I understand that. I don't know how I would do it differently, but like it never felt like it was the VAT system, you know? It always felt like another step that to do in combat.
I liked it because it created interesting roleplay moments. Like Lance's arm or Gerry's knee. But
It
at the
gave
same
you an
time,
opportunity to be descriptive with things.
yeah. But at the same time, it didn't feel weighted right because I felt like we hit the arms and the legs the most, but that doesn't seem realistic. Like if you're shooting at someone, to me at least, it feels like center mass is easiest to hit. So that should be maybe, I don't know. That's just a nitpicky thing though.
It was really the legs all the time.
Yeah.
It was always legs.
I can tell you that just without even looking at like any statistical data, it was right leg, I think, the majority of the time.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I agree with Susan. It definitely did seem intimidating, especially because I came in late to the system. But like you said, it was a lot simpler than it seemed. And I love also, Xavier, that you would get a perk each level because it made it really feel kind of like the video game in a way, and the customization of the character too, the fact that you have so many options to take, so many branches, if you will.
And I personally love, and I think this is more of to you guys, I loved, it's a mechanic of the game, the mementos, but I love how each character interacted with it and made those like, just juicy moments that were like, so good.
Xavier found a lot of opportunities to do that.
To get his luck points back.
But mostly, and you've been like snipping some of my meta talk a little bit during those kind of more roleplay moments. But after every scene, generally, I was just like, okay, but really though, I get my luck points.
The action points, I really like that economy. Like anytime that like the point economy that gives players agency and flips back and forth between the GM and the players, I think that's so cool. I really love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In all tabletop RPGs, one of my favorite things to do is modify the difficulty threshold. Like when the mechanics allow you to choose to lower the difficulty with some cost or some action or something, it's always so much fun because it's a resource management kind of thing, I guess, but like it makes things more exciting all the time.
What was it like to run the game? Like how much prep time did it usually take? Was it hard to translate something like a video game into a tabletop RPG experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had realized luck points had become very valuable to the party, and I was like, well, I don't want them to have this many for the next part coming up, so let me find a way to do this. We can get rid of
to
some
drain
fast
them.
Time was one of the big issues I had, and then adapting to that time and changing the encounters to fit what we needed to accomplish in that time was the biggest challenge for me. Nothing about the system itself nothing like that was the challenge. It was more about external factors being kind of the pressure being put on the game itself. But with that being said, I feel like being able to adapt to those things comes from like my professional background of working in tech or in video games where like things break literally every day. Nothing operates the way it was intended to operate at first, and then you find a way to get it to move at least in a specific way. So I'm used to doing things like that, but with a lot more restrictions in my professional career. Whereas here, it's like, okay, I'm in charge, so what would I do? Well, let's just design a gambling system on the fly real quick and make them burn something that they're using all the time so that they can't use it next time. Yeah, luck points. They're the bane of my existence. Luck points and the railway gun, I think, were two of the most frustrating things in the game.
Yeah. One was a problem you made yourself, kind of.
Yeah, I gave it. Well, okay, here's the thing.
And then you gave her more bullets.
Well, it was the end. It was the end. I was like, this is the last stand.
True.
But giving the railway gun, like the fact that it's listed as a small gun.
Oh
like,
my God.
on,
Yeah.
I love that.
Modiphius, somebody in your designing team or your balancing team really, really likes that gun. I can tell you right now.
The gun was great. I love that gun. I'm going to have it in all my campaigns.
It's probably a legendary weapon now. Like
Yeah.
if this was a video game, that'd be like
It's magical now.
It'd have a star.
Yeah.
It'd have a star on it for sure.
Yeah,
I wanted to put it in the epilogue, but I didn't know how to like work it in. Like you could see the hilt of it on Gerry's shoulder. Like
It has its own epilogue.
It should have, yeah. So we've got a question from Twitter from a Twitter user, Noxus Cram, who wants to ask: did the players come with strong PC concepts to start, or was it more of a collaborative discussion to make a fairly balanced party? So what was the character prep that you brought into this?
We did it together, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we started with a session 0. We kind of all knew what we were getting into, and we sat down and I think we threw out some ideas. It was very collaborative, if I remember. We threw out ideas of what we were interested in.
I think you were like, I'm feeling ghoul, but I'm open to discussion. And then Xavier was like, I'm feeling Volt, but I'm open to discussion. And I've always approached character creation as I will fill the missing piece. I'd never come in with hard ideas because that's just how I play. I like to develop a character as I go instead of coming in with an idea of one. So you two having those, I was like, okay, I'll fill the gap. You guys do what you guys want, and I'll be the normie, I guess.
The normie packed in layers of clothes, gun hoarder,
But
not normie at
later. That developed later.
My initial idea for Sonny was he was way more of a hardened capitalist.
Oh.
My idea was he would sell his own mother down the river for profit, and he'd be able to sell a ketchup popsicle to someone in white gloves, that was my plan. He was just an absolutely ruthless capitalist, exploiting people's labor and all that kind of stuff. And that really changed very quickly because and this is stuff that Alex sort of brought into the game, because very early on Alex was talking about the way the community reacted to Sonny and what his place was in it, and just sort of filling in the details of this world of sort of this vagueness around Sonny that I hadn't, and a lot of that really informed the character moving forward. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. He's more about these concentric rings of community, the smallest being the store, and then First Hill, and then the Evergreen, and any external threats from that to those communities are threats that he won't abide.
I think I did it for everyone, because the way I remember it was I would ask questions. I think some of them were basically okay, what does your person think about this? Okay, how did they grow up? And then I was like, okay, well, I need one traumatic experience that shaped everybody. I know Susan's we came up with during the group 0 session.
Yeah.
Lance's, I can't remember. I know Sonny's, Ian and I talked about it, not on session 0, because his developed over time. And I think Lance's more, we leaned into it where Xavier had an idea and then it changed. He messaged me on Messenger. He's like, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. How do we get here?
I think we had a structure after session 0, because I remember you asked me what was his first interaction with a firearm outside of the vault, I think. And that's where I was he saw other vault dwellers get executed. That was his traumatic event. But there's a bunch of stuff we hadn't established before because I didn't pick my perks and everything at that time, and the perks is what really drove in the anger aspect of Lance, the adrenaline rush, and because I wanted to min max his fists. That was the goal. And through perks, that's how he became this really violent dude, and gets these panic fits and just whatever he can't control, he loses his shit. And that wasn't part of the idea at first. The idea at first was so simple. It was just basing it on this guy from here in Quebec, who his name's Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who's kind of a provincial celebrity, because in Quebec, as soon as someone is successful outside of Quebec, we talk about them in the news for a million years.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the only or the first or one of the few Quebecers who won the Super Bowl. He won in the 2020 with the Chiefs.
Oh, congrats.
And he's like not a Renaissance man, but like he's a medical student. Like he was one of, if I read his Wikipedia page, like one of 4 graduates of a medical college, I think, in the NFL or something, like that kind of stat. And he took a year off during COVID to work in a long-term care facility. So he's this kind of like super altruistic dude who's like well-traveled, but he wasn't handsome then. He wasn't angry then. He was sports-like, but he wasn't super strong. And then with the perks and with Alex saying like, oh, Vault Dweller. Well, in Vault 6, the thing that they do there is that they genetically engineer people to be beautiful. I was like, all right, I'm on board. So this was also like from you. And then the rest is like, it was just with play and yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I think developed for all 3, even all 4 of you over time with play.
And obviously there's different for Jamie, who came in and took over someone who was a non-player character and turned it into a player character. I
loved playing Trish. She was super fun. Alex min-maxed the fuck out of her. So she was great in terms of, fights and things like that. I do wish I had had the opportunity to create my own character within the world. Just because, that's always a very fun part of, So I did feel, I think in the beginning, maybe some separation a bit, because I was trying to jump into not only a character that I didn't write myself, but a character that had already been on the show. But no, I had a great time. And like I said, it was dope to be able to always hit and always hit very hard. So thank you, Alex, for that.
You're welcome. The funny thing is I gave her a choice. It's a great
feeling.
I gave Jamie a choice. I was like, okay, this is what's on the team already.
Yeah.
So you have a choice between Trish or
a robot.
A robot that was a Mr. Handy, but like a nanny build, one of the nanny builds that they have in the book.
And I'm going to be honest, Alex, you sent me those 2 character breakdowns, and Trish's was like a full page long, and the robots was like
a paragraph,
a couple sentences, and I was like, I feel like Alex wants me to pick.
Well, because the robot existed in the game already. It's somewhere out there. Yeah. But it was a random encounter on one of these tables I made. Whereas Trish was like, well, they're gonna run into this person, so I have to give her here's her life. Here's what she did. Here's where she wants to go. Which the chance was, if they had let her die on that roof, there would never have been. There wouldn't have been a choice between Trish and a robot. It would have been a robot and something else, probably.
And can I say, Jamie, I've pinpointed the moment that, you really brought Trish to life to me. And I don't know why, but in one of the episodes, I think it's the episode where Trish is putting the gun back together. And the family comes up to her, that woman comes up to her. It's like, how do you do that? And you say, practice. And for some reason I was like, oh my God, she's got it. That it's there. And I don't know why, but immediately you had given her life. It was incredible.
Oh, thanks. That makes me feel better about it.
It's true. Yeah, that line really stood out.
Yeah, and Alex, you did flashbacks for every single character multiple times. Do you how did you sort of prepare that or go about putting those together? Because some of it came about from stuff that we had talked about in our session 0 and as we played the game, but some of it were things that you brought creatively and sort of presented and be I kind of want to do this.
For me, I think the point I was trying to get across is that there's different layers, and so what I wanted to do with the characters was get them in flashbacks, get them into some kind of situation that taught them something, which turned them into who they are today. So it's just things like that, where I had ideas with the flashbacks where it's this character is acting this specific way based on the player. So there has to be some sort of event that shaped them to be like that. I took the best part of Lost which was the flashbacks. And I brought that here because that's the only thing I liked about Lost. I like up until a certain point where it just got absolutely trash. I really felt like those flashbacks, they anchored the viewer into wanting to care for the character for that episode. And so I want to do the same thing for us, but since, each one of the characters had a different origin and ultimately has the same goal, I needed to find like a little personal, not vendettas, but maybe mission statements that they hadn't outwardly said out loud. So Gerry's was, ever since her dad died, she felt like the spirit of adventure had died from the tribe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was whenever you did the first, like, Gerry hears her dad's voice as she does this thing, which I think was around then. I think that's when I was like, okay, so moments that are significant would make her think of her father.
I really wanted, and I'm sorry, Jamie, I wanted to do it for Trish the most, was the flashback with her squad. I never got to do that one. I only got to do the super mutant laughter that woke you up from a nightmare. I had it ready. I remember thinking like, hey, this, but it's like, it can't go anywhere now. I can't, we're almost there. We're
Once
at the
you're
end.
past the point, it's like, you don't want to jam it in and out of place.
We've got a couple of questions. Actually, a couple of people have said, G Soto on Discord and also Rain Medic on our Discord and Twitter have asked sort of similar questions about, are there any storylines or things that you didn't get to either for your character or for you, Alex, the GM, that you would have liked to have done or have seen?
I think it would have been cool to go further into that Brotherhood compound.
Oh, at the very end?
Yeah. Because I bet there would have been some cool stuff.
Oh, there was.
Yeah.
There was.
But I really like how it played out.
Oh, me too.
I really like that we got captured. That felt great, actually, to get captured and get breakout. That's great.
I really like in that battle too, Alex is describing like everyone's suiting up, getting power armor, and Xavier's like, where are they getting that power armor? and Alex is like, none for you. There's none for you.
First of all, in the book, it says you need to be trained to wear it or have the Brotherhood origin, so you ain't wearing shit. Don't even ask.
That's fair.
It would have been cool to interact with the Brotherhood more, like have an interaction, not just like we found this ghost compound. Or I know it would have sucked for us, but it was such a looming storyline the whole time. Like don't encounter them. Like it would have been cool to see how that interaction would have happened. Not saying that I appreciate the way the story went, but that would have been cool.
They'll be in the expansion pack.
Yeah, in the DLC, Brotherhood of Steel. But I agree, Susan. Like it would have been cool to like see more of that. But I in contrast too, I also really like how it really felt like those events were the backdrop in which our character's story were playing as well. That really felt like we were in the Fallout universe, because like there were this like big faction thing that it was just like the backdrop for like us basically like trying to pick up kids and bring them home, like.
Our hands were tied kind of like from exploring the world, just because we had to find those two kids. We couldn't really, that thread of the underground Brotherhood bunkers, it got me so excited, but at the same time not being able to take a vacation and go find one made the world so much bigger, because I knew they existed. They could be anywhere, but we wouldn't get to see them. It just like, it felt like a big old world. If I can add one moment that I wish we had seen, but that didn't turn out, and I'm sure Alex will expand upon that later, talking about his story branches, but there was a fork in the timelines where when we got captured, we're like trapped with Emmett and Bear and Cassie, and I don't know if it made it on the show, but Ian rolled a die to know what fate had in store for us. Okay. One of the options was that we could have gone to like a Wipeout style arena games at the Huskies arena across the water, a full Mad Max style, and I kind of worked it out in my epilogue. So,
the handsome devil.
Yeah.
Man, I would have loved to have had that Mr. Handy repaired. I think that would have been
Yes.
so cool. I think that would have been
Nobody wrote it in their epilogue. I was expecting one of you guys to write about it. That's why I didn't mention it. I was like, no, one of them will talk about it. Nobody talked about it.
You listener are listening to this, know that Sonny has the handy bot.
Yes,
repair.
yes.
It's
100%
working for Sonny.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's
So
something.
it's-
It's something he doesn't have to pay or feed, and so it like totally works out.
Best intern ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from Noxus Cram from Twitter. Just wanted to ask you, Alex, as a GM, was it difficult to balance the aspects that are most prevalent in video games? What was your theory for like enemy loot and skill checks and stuff without feeling like a grinder for the players?
It definitely felt in the early stages like it was a grinder. You know, like it was very difficult to balance what I thought you guys should have gotten for the effort put in. Because it's the 2D20 system, and then this book in particular they don't have great balancing tips because it's so new of a system. So I kind of defaulted to, okay, if I was Ian and I wanted to make sure the story is getting told, what would Ian do, right? And it's like, well, I'd let them pick, you know, what do they think they find? And there's some instances where I'm like, I'm thinking about doing that, and I'm like, well, realistically, this NPC or this enemy they fought would have XYZ item on them. So I married the style of narrative first, Ian style school of storytelling, and a little bit of realism, like from when I have played Fallout games, like what do these enemies typically carry that can work within the confines of the book? It sucks, but a part of me had to ignore the video games too.
Yeah.
Like quest design that was a big one. Like I wanted to at one point just be like, just take quests from Fallout 4 and reskin them and kind of stretch them different. That's to be easy. But no, I looked at them, read some like walkthroughs online just to see, and I was like, a lot of these are like, hey, go here, meet this person, do this. Okay, now go again to another place. It's like 6 parts of where you hand the baton. What is that kind of, a relay?
A relay.
Yeah. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can't really do that, especially when we have a campaign that has an ending. So although getting to Marcos and V felt like a relay, right? Because you're going from one point to another, you're getting clues as to what's happened to them. And also there's internal struggles each of you guys are dealing with too. So I had to make sure to pepper those as much as I could.
How do you balance the situations which are common on Respect the Crit of letting the players describe their outcomes? Because like it sounds like you were saying like that's sort of a style that you were like incorporating that is outside of how you approach things.
Yeah, I mean, you played my other game, so you know that I've never done that before. I've never been like, hey, what do you think's in here? And I think playing with you and Jamie and having you give us agency, I was like, oh my God, Ian's letting us build fucking lightsabers and shit. Like, I wanted to keep the spirit of the show alive. So there were instances where I would let you guys say, okay, if you use a luck point, what do you want to use your luck point for? Paint the picture for me. And I think the biggest one was the air conditioning unit was like the biggest one.
Yeah.
Oh,
that felt so cool. Like that felt really cool to do.
Like I love doing things like that. I feel like they really helped, and they helped push the story forward. And a lot of also like with your own characters too, you guys took liberties like, oh, I want this to happen, or can I say that? Like you'd message me, like Xavier messaged me like about the anger stuff. Like, how do we show this? How do we show that, you know, he was basically at the whim of the overseer before he left, and then we kind of painted that out as we played. So yeah, everyone did great, and everyone helped out in that regard also.
Yeah. There's a lot of communication in our games. You know, not just because we're doing a show, but that's part of it, but also that we're familiar with each other and we respect each other's boundaries, and we are trying to collaborate and respect each other creatively too. So yeah, lots of communication. I think we'll just kind of like go through these episodes one by one and just sort of like talk about them a little bit. Episode 1 and 2, actually, our very first session was split up into the first and second episode. And the splitting of the episodes is just something I do to sometimes control the episode length. That was just it ended up being a really long session, so I didn't want it to be a really long episode. I remember this, and I think Xavier, this is kind of why we sort of like went straight forward for the one plot thread that we sort of like went with, because Alex, like the very beginning, he's like, there's no hard set path. But then he quoted one of the Marvel shows, and he was like, I paved these roads that you walk on. Please walk on the roads. And so, like, I think that influenced all of us. Like, the first thing that was, like, quest-like, we immediately jumped on. And we were like, okay, we're doing this. Like, that's what we're doing.
It's true. That is true.
We have a sort of like, in that episode, we have a sort of character introduction. We sort of like touch on everyone. And that's where we meet Amelia for the first time. And she sort of is like the quest giver, talks about V, her daughter V, Olivia, who has run away.
I think Lance's like eagerness to help her, I think that's what cemented for Gerry for her whole interactions with Lance. Like, she never thought of herself as a hero in her own story. She thought, if there's a hero, it's this beautiful man who took a quest that just was given to him. Like he just came to the waste, and now he's like accepting a quest to find missing child. That's so admirable. So you could see that later on. Like, you have to survive. You have to make it, and it's because of that. Because he was so willing to help right away.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't put those together. I'm trying to recall what my headspace was playing Lance in that first episode, because every first episode I'm kind of like, I'm not sure how the character would react and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I hate turning down a quest. Like, so I don't like being like, well, my character wouldn't do that, because I like story, so I'm torn between the two, and I generally rule in favor of story more than, well, my character wouldn't do that, for like picking up story threads kind of thing. I think I mostly said yes to that quest just because
because like quest was given to you.
Yeah. Lance wanted to be a good guy. Like, he couldn't say no. And then like I tried to fit in like, oh well, maybe, or Alex was like, oh, she reminds me of your mom, that like she didn't want to lose you. Like, or
I did that all the time.
Yeah,
I did that all the time.
That helped. So that helped kind of like figure out who Lance was. But yeah, after the episode where you had the flashback of like the execution, the idea that Lance has to help as many people as he can was like much more clear at that time.
Oh, that's super interesting, because I really felt like Lance drove that scene to like get us in that trajectory. But it's interesting that wasn't like a solidified characteristic yet. That was just sort of like,
that was a yes and mostly, but then I was like, it won't be a yes and for the sake of being a yes and. Yes and I wanted to let that inform who Lance was going to be. So like saying yes and at that time informed what Lance would turn up later on.
100%. I definitely had moments like that for Sunny. I like how we left some of those doors open in our characters, sort of like fill in as we went. It's always cool to like watch those characters change, like who they become at the end of the campaign. And Alex, I gotta ask, like, I know that was sort of like our main quest and probably the thing that you anticipated us like gravitating towards, but I remember you alluding to like, well, there's stuff if you just decided to like not help her as well. Like, were there things that you had prepared in your listeners? Alex has this incredible tree, and I know that we've alluded to it on the show a couple of times, but he has a flow chart. A flow chart is what he calls it.
Yeah, flow chart.
And this is the thing that guided us, and it was his prep material for the entirety of this campaign. So this infamous flow chart, was there anything on this flow chart that we could have like branched off to had we said, given the finger to Amelia?
No one cares about children.
Yes. So the entire, I called book one is what I called our campaign. Book one, The Missing. And there's only one other option after this. And I never wrote more than two little bubbles, right? Because I was like, they're not going to go this way. It was just called The Wall. It says, trigger, decline the missing. Security Captain Abad needs merchants to attend town meeting. That's where all like the info dump that they're losing, guards, there's something's happening, and you would have to go downtown, and it would be called Walls on the Shore. Party has been conscripted to aid security teams deal with the new Putty threat. Putty was the name of the Wailing Ones, the
Squishy gum.
semi-independent sentient creatures that were like the bipedal versions of the wall. It becomes hyper aggressive from just eating so many super mutants and so many centaurs and other creatures that are mutated, and it just decides, okay, the only way to ensure my safety is to be the more aggressive creature in this ecosystem, which means destroying this giant settlement of people that I keep making all this noise and that I keep hearing their thoughts from. And so eventually he would attack First Hill. So it would have just been this like, defend the city, repel this beast, and eventually when the beast gets too powerful, you have to go into it and find a way to destroy it. So it was a completely different game.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think we were kind of bummed because like it got introduced, but we were like heading away from it, like away from that storyline, obviously. And we were like, oh man, we really want to meet the Gumwall. And like, I spent a lot of time like building a whole soundscape to your narration of like how the Gumwall is introduced. And when you were like, you're probably not going to run into it because you're going the other way, I was like, God damn it.
I fixed it.
Yeah. And in that same session, in the next episode, we have a choice of going to the bar, to Victor's bar, or to the sanitation engineers.
We just go straight to the top.
You go to like, yeah.
We decide, I've listened back to the episode, and it's like we're all kind of like talking about, where should we go first and why? And Xavier is like, Susan, what do you think? And Susan's like, let's go to the engineers. And it's like, okay, let's go to the engineers. So we go there and we like decide we want to talk to the top brass of the engineers. Secretary
of State, essentially.
We meet Julia McKnight, who's like, I had no idea that she was this important in the universe. I was just like, we're just going to go talk to like the person who runs the engineering. But she was also like this community's leader as well. But I think that's where we first start learning that the security is spread thin. I think we also learn that everything is on lockdown, but caravans can go through. And then that at the end of the episode, that's when we have the gum wall.
A couple things that we missed here. Biggest one for me was the abandoned church that sits in First Hill, Marlin Square, and it's where a lot of the people who don't have the capability of building shelters or are incapable of doing it because they're like addicts of some kind take refuge. And there is a priest, essentially some sort of religious figurehead, who's not recognized by the council as like a leader, but amongst his people, I gave them the name, the Unfortunates, I think is the name I gave them, this organization. He is considered their leader. This is Nell Whiff. Nell Whiff is the secret leader of a vampiric cult.
Whoa.
Similar to Fallout 3 where they have those guys who drink blood. Nell Whiff, he is the leader of a vampiric cult because there was an immortal person who lives underground.
Wow.
This creature it's neither ghoul nor human. It's just something it's a person who somehow through radiation and through his own biological studies has kept himself alive.
And we just stepped over that one.
Well, yeah.
That would have been cool.
And he gave himself the title of Saint Sanguine.
Oh, cool.
Other than that, there are two other exit routes outside of First Hill should you not get through the front gate. One of them being, and I mentioned it to you in the description of the Mechanics Bay, there are the water, those tunnels where the guys work and they end up getting a third nipple or whatever from the water. So one of those pipes could have been drained and you have a perfect straight shot out to the abandoned medical facilities outside of First Hill, like these old hospital buildings that are out there.
Oh.
Another one was called the Broadway Wall. And so waiting on the other side of the wall is a random encounter. So like we had a Mr. Gutsy who's patrolling spots the party and asked them to take a communist test. This is directly from Fallout 4. One of the party members trips over a concealed chain. If the party pulls on the chain, they find it's connected to a metal cover via Terminator 2 weapon cache. The other one is this is my favorite one. A Protectron seen walking aimlessly near a destroyed police vehicle. The Protectron can spot the party if they approach it openly. Otherwise, they can sneak past it or get closer. Up to you. It approaches with no weapons drawn, the Protectron speaks to the party and states that its name is David. David does not realize it is a Protectron and will repeatedly say that I feel strange. David is a special model of Protectron which holds a human brain in its center chassis. David is the result of an experimentation done by the Brotherhood at the Armory, which is another place we'll get to later on. David escaped not too long ago and managed to find his way east of First Hill, as people seemed to avoid him, and the settlement itself fired some warning shots at him when he tried to approach.
It would have changed the tone of the campaign so much.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these, I feel like for our goal, everything we've encountered fit the vibe. I feel like there wasn't too much that was out of left field. Just feel like it just flowed so well. Everything we've encountered, like all our outcomes.
And there's more. We got more later on, so we'll keep going through these episodes because I got a few more.
And we come to the next episode, which is our first flashback, and that's Gerry leaves her home, and we get the first sort of like peek into Gerry's tragic incident with her dad's death.
So I loosely based Gerry off of someone I know, one of the coolest people I know. She's just like a complete badass. Her name is Geraldine, and she goes by Gerry because she's just so cool. She's like a badass lady who worked on a ranch and then started working in the office, and she doesn't take shit from anybody, but she's like one of those people, one of those women who always said no before it became okay, you know? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like she was always that type of person. She's like, back in the 70s, 60s, she would tell him like, no, like, fuck you, get out of my face. I'm a strong woman. I do what I want. Mm-hmm, so that's who I based Gerry off of. And I knew that my real life Gerry was a daddy's girl because she always talked about how much she loved her dad. So that's what I wanted with Gerry.
Nice. And then tragedy ensued.
Yes. And then Alex is like, well, we got to kill him.
Yeah.
No. I have my notes right here. So one thing I never mentioned was like the origins of Gerry's tribe. They're from Canada. So Gerry's people originated in Canada.
Gerry's a Canuck.
Yeah.
Ancestors are from Canada. So Bear and the Wood, like those guys who live on the little fringe, that little abandoned neighborhood where they live underground and they are like expert hunters and survivors, also originate from Canada as well. A lot of like the survivalist tribes that exist in Evergreen can find their roots in Canada. I don't know why I made it that way. I think I was watching like survival videos or something to get ideas, and a lot of the guys I was watching were from Canada. They're like on YouTube.
One of the things I regretted in this campaign is I'm so used to playing like long-term campaigns where you like slow drip pieces of information and you don't have to really expand on them in the moment because it might be revealed like 10 episodes later. And then I wasn't in the mindset of this is a one-shot that has a end. Mm-hmm. So there was a moment, I think, in that episode right after Gerry has her flashback, I think they're still in the bar, and then Sonny notices there's something off. And he's like, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, oh, we'll get to it later. I'll tell him about this tragic backstory later because
there's all the time in the world. No, I agree. Like, I think Alex and I talked about like, you know, how long we wanted this to be. And I think we didn't have like a concrete total idea of when it would end, but we knew that it would end. And I feel like that helped like laser focus our storytelling, like get to the beats and the things that mattered. And like, I found it very helpful. And I think it's something that I want to bring into my own GM style. Like in our Star Wars game, you know, I sort of came in with the idea like, oh, we'll tell these stories, but we have all the time in the world. Like maybe it's 200 episodes, whatever, who cares? And I like the stories that we've told so far, but like knowing that there's an end and like forcing that on you, like really laser focuses that GM style. And I think that that's something I'm going to absolutely adopt moving forward for any game that I run. Cause yeah,
I'm definitely going to take this style from Alex. Like, we got to hit these beats, and if you don't, I'll make it happen. It will come to you.
Yeah, it's coming to you. It's coming to you. Yeah, totally.
I only had to do that twice.
We leave First Hill and head out for the Evergreen, and we have our first encounter with a rad scorpion, and this is the first time that we actually meet Trish as well. This is Trish before Jamie started playing Trish, but this is the first time that we see our NCR Ranger, and we have our first combat, which starts out horribly.
Yes. We were not meant to fight that.
It was on the table, so this was on a different table. You also have another one, which is one of my favorites. It's a random creature from a table I built, so it could have been like a mutated badger, a yaoguai, or any other large mammal, essentially. This creature has the ability to speak psychically with the players. The creature's goal is to reach Lake Washington and head east into nature to escape from the Brotherhood and the rest of humanity. The party can decide to aid it or capture it somehow and take it to any medium to large settlement to sell it. The party can also return the creature to the Brotherhood patrol for a boost in reputation and possibly some compensation. Taking the creature to Lake Washington and helping it get into the water via boat or some other means completes the side quest. The creature will give the party experience, 100 caps, comfort grip mod for small guns.
That's just carrying around in his cheeks.
I was gonna say that's something. It's like it killed somebody, and it just gives you these things. Like, here you go.
Oh, so there was a lot of opportunity for us to make more friends along the way. Man, that actually would have been cool. I think that would have been interesting.
That would have been super cool.
Yeah, like I think my instinct as Sonny would be like, well, we gotta sell it until he like learns it's sentient or something, you know, and then that would.
Oh, but how fucked would it be if it was a yaoguai? Like Gerry would probably want to kill it.
Yeah, that could have been really cool.
Could Jamie have played the psychic yaoguai?
Oh, that would have been cool. So yeah, in following that, we have our next flashback, which is Sunny flashback. Our first Sunny flashback takes place in Island Town. And this is the first time we sort of like run into the cause and people of the cause, Tobias. Alex sort of like wrote some of these like ideas and he sent them to me and he was like, I want to do this for Sunny's flashback. And it wasn't anything that I had like thought about, but I was like, okay, let's do this. And this was all about like him coming back to Island Town from Garfield. And although we didn't really like talk about the events of Garfield at that moment, sort of like set up that they were incredibly like harrowing and hard. I think it really like surprised me because the cause came off as like total assholes. And I was like, I came in thinking like Sunny had this really beneficial relationship with the cause and was like really looking to them as leadership. But I came away from that flashback with like, oh, Sunny thinks this is probably just like the best option that they have. So
I made the point that like nobody's hands are clean. So I wanted to reiterate that especially with these two groups, because normally the Brotherhood is seen as like staunch defenders of technology, armor. We are righteous.
Well, they're like the military. They're like the military remnants. Yeah,
I was kind of bored of it. I was like, that's really boring. What if they're led by some dude who had a mission at some point, failed from the beginning by crash landing here, and then it was just gone batshit insane from the moment they crashed? You know. And then the cause probably, it started off with the woman I said as the leader, and then her vision over time just became so diluted with the thought of, oh, you know, I need to win at all costs. I can't lose to these guys. And that means exploiting smaller groups as I go and just absorbing them and saying that they're part of us when really I see them as appendages that I can cut off when things get too dangerous. And that's what I was trying to do with these two different groups. And I think that's why the flashback, I wanted to really show it with Tobias. Like, that's the kind of leadership they look for. That's the people they attract.
The ruthless, draconian, sort of like the ends justify the means.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then we find ourselves in Union, where we drop Trish off at the clinic. We go to the Up and Atom mechanic garage and meet Redmond Ubeda and Jamie Ubeda right away by accident, and find out they're the exact people that we need to speak with, because they are Mark's or Marcos's family.
That was
so funny.
I couldn't
After
have
in
written
First Hill, where we like meandered around
Yeah.
everywhere, we just go immediately serendipitously right to the right person.
I forget who suggested it, but I was thinking like they read my notes. There's no way they know.
I think it was Ian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no
because
way.
it was Sunny would be like, "Oh, I'll go to salespeople and talk to salespeople." I know that. Like that was the idea. Episode 5. This is our first Lance flashback, which is the RATS, which stands for
Resource.
Acquisition team.
Resource Acquisition Team. Nice. And he kind of struggles. We see Lance kind of struggles with anger and with being used as a tool of fear and intimidation.
I think in this episode specifically, and like with a lot of coincidences too, and dice rolls, like I think that's the episode where it all came up on the show. By that point, behind the scenes, Alex and I had decided that he had anger issues and stuff like that. The flashback, like Brock, I knew him from the write-up Alex gave me. I knew this scene was coming. I didn't really know how I'd play Lance reacting to that, so that was all improv. But I knew that like Lance had an anger issue at that point, so I had to not. I didn't want to overdo it. I wanted to keep it contained so that it could explode later on. And Alex did like a narration at the end of that flashback where you took control of Lance's anger. And I thought it was really well directed. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is more descriptive than what I would have done. So I like that you did it like in a narration form rather than me acting it out. And then later on in that episode, it just turned out that my adrenaline rush and my nerd rage activated. And then we got the other 2 flashbacks that we had in store for those 2 moments. We had this, like, we talked about it when adrenaline rush would like pop up for the first time. We knew that we would do the old man.
Oh yeah, that's when you were beating the old man to death in the vault.
I knew about that one. I didn't know it was going to be an old man. I knew that Lance like beat up someone from the crowd, and the crowd dispersed in horror. And then the other one with the hockey and like all the blood on the ice imagery. We also talked about it, but it was all in Alex's hand. But it was great that it all came together in this one episode that was like Lance's roid rage.
And then at the end of the episode, that's when we get ambushed by the crows, by raiders, and that's how that episode ends.
Yeah, that was a fun sequence. And Union was a really fun, contained couple of episodes.
There was other stuff in Union too. You missed a couple people. You could have gotten arrested, in which case you would face the Union legal system. The guards will fabricate a story that the party were aggressors. The party will be held captive for trial, but a cause handler will set them free to the crows in the middle of the night. So you would have been handed over to the crows.
Nice. I like those branches.
You will leave the Union with no guard fight, basically escaping the guards. You will still be kidnapped by the crows on the road. And then the one you went through, leaving Union after the guard fight, you flee and you are captured by the crows in an abandoned diner.
What really kind of got me about this interaction with the guards and like finding out that they're all cause and everything was like when we were recording that, I was like, why are they throwing so many people away? Like, why are they killing their own? This makes no sense to me. It seems so like utterly ruthless to protect these secrets that they didn't want anyone to have. And I think that was a big turning point in me thinking about how Sunny thinks about them, was like, oh, like he doesn't agree with that. Like that seems like a waste of human life for nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing for the cause. I got the idea from, the idea for their mentality from like, there's a game. It came out on DS. It's called Advance Wars, right? And every commander in that game has like a different strategy for how you play the game. And there was one that I absolutely hated, but I ended up beating the game with. And his whole thing is that all his units cost 0.5 less than everybody else's, but they're also 0.5% weaker. So his whole strategy is keep pumping out people and just keep sending them till you flood the screen with your units. And so for me, the cause is very similar to that, where like they have an abundant resource that they can pull from, and it's people. they can pull people as much as they want because they have, especially in the Evergreen, they have this massive-ish organization that is essentially and literally an iron gauntlet of oppression in their eyes, because they want you to live their way and, you know, operate under their rules. And these people were used to living one specific way. Of course, they're going to rebel and they're going to join a side that they feel is like, yeah, I want to go back to the way things were, even if it means, you know, it's going to cost a lot of people a lot of lives. They're so blind by their own, what they believe is their personal freedoms, that they jump on board.
Getting into the next episode, that we start this one off, episode 6, with a Gerry flashback. And this is Gerry and her dad, Benjamin. And this is, we actually see the event, the traumatic event of Gerry's dad getting mauled by a Yaogwai. The party wakes up at the back of the truck that's being drawn by Brahmin, and that's the first time that we meet Emmett, Cassandra, and Bear, who are just like other survivors that have been picked up. In the episode, they may have mentioned it, but I know that there's a lot more that could have happened here, with where we were heading. Alex, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah,
because that was kind of fun. That was one of the things you revealed to us, and we were like, "Whoa, really? Wow!"
Yeah, you missed, like, this is the start of the combat night arc, essentially. I think I had you roll for like what happens on the trailer, and the small percentage chance of you getting free via nature methods was what happened. The Yaogwai, a rogue Yaogwai, shows up. And
which was really cool because it was a Yaogwai that it happened to be on the random table.
Purely chance. Yeah, the one spot on there. I didn't even know that was going to be the flashback that we did when I was writing this part up. But the majority of the choices, or the majority of the things on the table that were ideally going to happen, was you end up getting to the Asian Art Museum, which is the Crow headquarters. And I did a lot of research on the Asian Art Museum, so much so that I downloaded a map from their website of like what it looks like and the different floors and stuff. And
we had a dungeon.
It was basically it was a dungeon essentially, yeah. Because there was a guy, I think it was Draven. What did I call him? I wrote him.
Yeah, Draven, leader of the Crows. Draven.
You would go to the Asian Art Museum. So I had a descriptor text. I had, the sun setting is the first thing you see as your eyes adjust to being hit with light for the first time in what you assume is a day. You move down and off the back of the large, hot, and vile-smelling container alongside other captives who you can now see. The raiders bark orders and seem to enjoy themselves as they poke and prod at a few female captives. The largest raider seems to be in charge as he grabs one of the weapons from a harassing raider and shoots him in the head, causing him to fall down and some gore to spill on you and the others. The area around you is an open plaza in the design of pre-war American opulence. Some small statues of men holding ancient weapons in various poses crumble beside large, empty flower pots. A gigantic structure behind you stands with its cylindrical center almost beckoning you to enter, as the rest of the structure gives off an almost fortified feeling with its rectangular design. The raiders begin forcing you and the rest of the captives into the large building. As you pass through the entrance, you notice a name carved into the wall overhead: Seattle Asian Art Museum.
We were en route to be sold to this like raider wasteland obstacle course with real people.
And I had plans that, okay, well, if they don't go to St. Mark's and they end up getting captured, going to Asian Art Museum, they're going to bypass that entire section. And that whole part is replaced with the teams trying to survive in Combat Night in the Husky Stadium.
Combat Night, that's right.
Yeah. And Combat Night, you'll have your fourth partner be Emmett, whose leg is in much worse shape by the time you get there.
Yeah, and Husky Stadium is the University of Washington's sports stadium that has been converted into this insane meat grinder.
Yeah, basically Fall Guys. Yeah, like you mentioned before, just Fall Guys, but in Fallout.
That would have been very fun.
I think that could be a fun one shot, you know?
Down for
Combat
that
Night?
one shot for sure.
I feel like this is when I started to feel that I was playing Gerry as she should be. Like before then, it was like the Rad Scorpion. She totally fucked that up. Couldn't hit. I think she shot like 6 bullets, didn't hit one. Like
she shot a very important one.
Yeah.
Killing blow.
But it was like, And then in Union, it was, I don't think she pulled out her gun, or I feel like it was just, she was playing into the intern role that she wasn't very good at. But then this is when she was like, hey, I got the switchblade hidden in my sleeve. I'm going to pick this lock. And then she gets out and then like...
No, yeah, you're right. And yeah. And when Lance fell on Gerry, that interaction was really interesting too. Like, just said so much about Gerry in like a really simple way. And after that, when we broke free, you climbed down with Bear to pick up the stuff. Like, yeah, you're right. You really got into Wastelander mode.
Yeah, it was like, okay, now I'm in my own, or Gerry's in her own element. Now I'm in charge, guys.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. This is the first time that you brought in the sort of like claustrophobia that Gerry has too. Was that something that you had known that you were bringing to the character as well, or just like was that something that came about in the moment, having your character chained up and stuff?
I think it was in the moment. I think it was the trigger of the Yaogwai. She could hear it in the distance. And then it was, oh, I can't access any weapons. Like, I don't have anything on me right now. It was I can't protect myself, and I hear it.
The characters get to St. Mark's, a little worse for wear, and Emmett takes them to a safe house where just at the very end of the episode, like, shit turns on a dime. Like, suddenly Lance finds like a Pip-Boy from his vault. There's like a whole stash of hidden guns, and then he actually draws on Sonny at the end, his own gun, and that's where we left it. I remember at the end of that, I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, that was wild.
I remember thinking about that for like a week afterwards. Like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, how are we gonna open up this episode? Like, is it gonna be like a quick shootout, and it didn't turn out to be exactly that. But like, all my assumptions were worse than what the situation actually was, which was a big misunderstanding, really.
Yeah. And then the next episode, we finally get to read the journal. We'd been carrying around this journal for a while, that we had stolen from Union, and recordings. We also had
the tapes.
Yeah, that were basically just, like cool little audio journals that were sort of like telling the tale of Marco's leaving and Karine going after him, and then catching us up to the current situation.
Yeah, that was a good bit of exposition that sort of really helped us get recentered around what the plot was after all these wasteland hijinks.
And it was right before the Seven Samurai too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good oasis of story before getting sidetracked again.
But I liked that. You really did those audio journals, like they really helped recenter the plot and like give exposition in a cool way that also felt a lot like the video game. Like their storytelling does that a lot.
Also, side note on this one, Karine was supposed to be one of like the end game characters. Like,
she kind of disappeared a little bit.
She's supposed to face you guys down, but by the time you guys are getting to the end, it's like she's insignificant in terms of the people that you have met or like the dangers you are facing. To have her be like an endgame boss or character, I was like, it doesn't work for me mechanically and canonically. It doesn't have the same impact as the reunion, the family / friends reunion that we had at the end.
Everyone is here.
When did that start shifting for you? When were you like, I need to find a way to like move the spotlight off of this character and onto someone else?
I want to say after the Seven Samurai incident, where I was like, okay, like they fought an entire gang of biker raiders of the future. Having one cause agent, maybe a handful of little cause agents at the end, be some sort of endgame group, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I'd be doing the story justice. Whereas I could have an entire garrison of them, as a faceless entity, and then sprinkle in a few faces that were recognizable from the past, like Brian being in there. Because I think his persona and his vibe overall, he fails the vibe check. It's just straight up, gross. That's the kind of representation I wanted for the cause at that stage.
Also on those tapes there was like Brotherhood bunker stuff, which is something that we kind of like touched on, and we never followed up. I'm curious what the Brotherhood bunker stuff was like. What
Another dungeon.
I need the first page. This is the super dungeon. Like if there
we
was
missed all the dungeons.
So the Brotherhood bunker is located in Interbay. So where they're at in story wise, because at the end of our story they retreat to Interbay. They stay in their last stronghold, which is their main where the ship crashed. I think I asked Ian this when I was first developing the story. I was like, hey, this building in downtown Seattle called the Armory, is it really an armory? And he's like, no, it's like a center for arts now. I was like, oh, okay. So then I did some research, and like around the end of World War II, they stopped using this building. It was called the Armory. They stopped using it for weapon storage and for housing soldiers, and it became a museum. And so knowing that in this timeline, in the Fallout universe, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like a federalist future.
to fight the Chinese communists.
Exactly, yeah, to fight our enemy abroad, right? Yeah. And so I thought, well, in this timeline, there's no fucking way that this building becomes a community center at all. This remains not only an armory, but I'd say that it becomes a joint effort research facility for the military and for Vault-Tec and I think some other company, I forget, ArcJet Systems, I think. The bunker, as it's called, is the underground levels of the armory where there are secret experiments where that robot that I mentioned before came from. And the animal, whatever creature has the ability to speak, it comes from there also. It's like this really gnarly science facility / prison where there's all these experiments. And
Umbrella.
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's exactly where I got the idea from. At the end of Resident Evil, you go into the bottom of the mansion. It's like, oh my God, there's a fucking lab here. And the Vault Dweller, whose Pip-Boy that was, is still alive in the facility as well.
That's so cool.
That's the nugget I wanted from this session.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask, now that we've moved so far from First Hill, but in downtown, like I know we could have went to downtown, but what, except the armory, like was it just the armory or was there like a lot of stuff to see?
Downtown Seattle is Super Mutant Central 2022. Like there are packs of super mutants that are roaming around. They don't have a master, so they're essentially just these gangs or clans trying to reclaim or claim supremacy over the others. But there's also the Space Needle was down there.
We kind of joked like at the beginning of starting all of this, like, oh, we've got to go to the Space Needle. It's so iconic for Seattle. And in fact, we like never go. We never even talk about it.
We
never even
look
mention
that
it.
direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Space Needle was essentially it's a checkpoint for me, for my world building, where it's like, okay, everything west of the Space Needle is Brotherhood territory. Everything south is Super Mutant, with a few exceptions, and then east is the independent settlements.
Was there anything at the Space Needle at all?
Yes, the Brotherhood. There's an entire quest of a Brotherhood paladin who needs help establishing a communications array, very similar to Fallout 4, except in this one you'd need to go to different parts of the Evergreen to get literally four different parts to get equipment and bring it back. And when you do, it sends a signal to the Brotherhood back in Washington, D.C., like, hey, we've established a foothold, come help us. And that wraps up with them wraps up with them showing up with more ships.
That's the side with the Brotherhood version.
The minute we started talking about characters, I was like, this is never gonna happen.
Well, if Sunny died, then Ian rolled some backup character, maybe.
That's true. Yeah, that could. Yeah.
Like, oh, we don't hate Brotherhood now.
Well, I put it there. I put it there for in case anyone actually did make a Brotherhood character. That's why I put that.
That's true. That's true. Someone could have.
Well, that's kind of. We've got a question from Rain Medic on our Discord, and who's active in our Discord and Twitter. How much of the campaign did you flesh out before recording started? Like it sounds like you built some of this stuff in preparation for if we were going to have characters from certain factions. Like how much of it did you flesh out before we actually recorded?
A lot. I mean, I feel like I don't want us to play on an empty map. That's like the one thing I wanted to avoid. I wanted everything to feel like it had existed before we got here or before you guys got here. I wanted everything to have the feeling of, well, it had this event happen here, or somebody here can tell you about an event that happened around here, or a famous person in our history, in the Fallout universe's history lived here, like a famous person in relation to our characters. So a lot of it was first dotting the settlements. So from there, after making the settlements and the history of what happened, I started dotting a couple important NPCs, like leaders, bad guys, NPCs who are kind of more skewed towards the line of evil, and then of course a couple of neutral NPCs, any and all crazy creatures like the vampire Saint Sanguine.
Nice. Okay, so a large chunk of it you had sort of like at least thought about and outlined before we actually did recording. That's awesome. That's awesome, man. That's a lot of work. And
Yeah.
I would spend whole days just writing things up. I remember I'd be like, okay, this Saturday I'm writing up about this part of the Evergreen.
I feel like you can tell by your way of storytelling and like the descriptions that you use, and when you're setting the scene for us and we're about to start playing. I love when Ian is like, all right, Alex, set the scene. Let's jump in. And then Alex will just trail off on this long description, and it's like, oh, I'm in there. I'm in the world. And I can tell that you've put in a lot of preparation and a lot of thought has gone into it. And thank you so much for,
Oh man, thank you
doing
guys
that for us.
No, it's only worth it because you guys take it in and play. That's the only reason it's worth it, I feel like.
Moving into the next episode, we start off with Lance flashback at the Super Duper Mart. And this one's real brutal.
This is a product. This is Xavier product. This is not.
Well, the idea, the original idea, but you made it, like, you made the details of it, like how the executions happened, how the crows handled it.
The blame is at your feet, sir.
I feel it. I hear it.
But no, man, that was great. That's the kind of thing where, like, I knew that aspect of Lance, but hearing you tell the story kind of like just helped me visualize it more. And the thing that was new though was trying to save the last rat. That wasn't part of the write-up of the flashback. It's just like, you asked me, do I want to do something in the flashback? I'm like, I'm going to try to save one, which we hadn't talked about. I'm like, can I change fate?
I think that was my first time trying that out. I was like, you know what? It's not going to affect anything because this person's going to die either way, but I want to see what Lance does.
But that was great. Again, I knew where I was going with Lance, but that part where he can't save that person really cemented like the idea that I have to save everybody. Like I can't let more people die. So that, and retroactively, like I knew I was gonna do that when we met Trish, and when all my medicine rolls just failed and I couldn't save Trish. I just made it worse. I knew that Lance couldn't handle like having things outside of his control, so I tried to act like make him more panicky or like startle or whatever. I don't know if I played it the way I would have at the end of this campaign kind of thing, but like I knew that seed was there already, so like he couldn't save Trish. That kind of like put him in a really like panic state.
I was really excited for this flashback because you kept alluding to it like in previous episodes, like you're like, oh yeah, there's this thing at the Super Duper Mart, that incident at the Super Duper Mart, and we all knew something happened, but like we didn't know the details of it. So when that finally like came up, I was like, oh man, wow. And I was always thinking like, Sonny probably knows where that Super Duper Mart is, and since he didn't know like Lance's past about it, I was always waiting for an opportunity to be like, oh, if we're low on supplies, I know a Super Duper Mart we can go to. Yeah,
that would have been nice.
It's true. Oddly enough, this one I think is near.
Yeah, I remember your map, and I think we were always heading away from it. So I was like, well, there's no opportunity. But this is also the episode that we learned that Gerry is asexual as well, and I think this comes up because Bear is sort of like awkwardly hitting on her in the previous stuff, and Susan was kind of playing it like, I'm like totally unfazed by it.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, you do you.
Yeah,
he was like, if I had a reason to stay, do you? Looks around.
Can't think of any.
I was just gonna say that's kind of something I thought of. It wasn't something I came into the game thinking of, but once she met Lance, I wanted her to objectively see him as beautiful, but not to be attracted to him. Just like, wow, you're very, very handsome, but I didn't want it to be like, get in to bed with me. Like,
Well, that's almost how I felt every interaction with everybody was with Lance. Like, everybody complimented his looks, but like nobody flirted with, except for Sunny.
yeah.
Like,
I was
Sunny
gonna
was
say-
the only one flirting with Lance.
Sunny.
Yeah,
Definitely,
I made it very I made it very explicit that Sunny very much was attracted to Lance. But I was always like writing that line of like, I don't want it to be creepy, but like
No, it was super good. And
was perfect.
I like, even me, I don't know what, I didn't think about what Lance's like sexuality was. Like, I'm assuming he's like me, like cis hetero or whatever. He's me, but buff. But
buffer than you, Xavier.
oh,
Impossible.
buffer.
How?
Oh, so there's a line where at the very end, Brock asks him like, "What do you want to do? Like, you're gonna go back to the vault or what?" And Lance turns around to Sunny and he's like, "There's some people I met that I want to stay with," and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, whether he knew or not, maybe Lance just like wanted to be with Sunny, like platonic relationship or not, but I didn't really know. But I was like, Sunny is probably the person who means the most to Lance. I'm like, I'm just gonna allude to it and like not necessarily confirm it, but I'm like, yeah, that's a possibility that Lance ended up being like probably not physically attracted to Sunny, but just romantically.
Yeah. I really feel that a lot, because I think like at the end, like Sunny's lonely, you know,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
I think he really would have liked to just had people around, and I think that's why he hung on to like the store so tightly, because he's just a lonely old man when it comes down to it. He's very much like Santiago, you know, like just a different side of that coin, but
That's
And not a
right.
serial killer.
That's why I made it. Whoa, Santiago's not a serial killer.
Maybe Lance spent some quality time with Sunny until he got kidnapped and disappeared forever.
yeah,
No,
for
poor
sure.
Sunny.
Oh, broken heart, snap. So yeah, just moving along. This is one of our shopping episodes, and we meet the townie, who is based on a real person. Alex, do you want to like sort of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a guy, when the Modiphius announced the 2D20 system and the Fallout Player's Guide, a gentleman by the same name, the Townie, on 3i Townie on YouTube and on Twitter. He would make tutorial videos. In the YouTube videos, I watched them when I was learning how to play the system. It really helped me with like understanding combat, because that was one of the hardest things to grasp. It's like theater of the mind combat. And so I based this character essentially around him, and I asked him a couple of questions beforehand. I was like, well, are you a dog or a cat person? What are some of your hobbies? And he responded in the Twitter DM. He was like, oh, I'm so honored. Thank you so much. I've always been interested in a podcast, a recording format like the live play format like this, and very much heavily inspired on the fact that he said he enjoyed camping. So I'm like, oh, this guy, the townie is a traveling merchant, 100%. Like, he doesn't stay anywhere.
Well, that's cool. I know putting people from your experiences, whether they're games or in real life, is like something you enjoy very much in your GM style, and I love to see it. And and of course the townie was, or the 3i Townie, the man who makes those videos, are very helpful. He's always been really great, and liking us on Twitter and stuff. And so glad to have him in the game. Glad to have him in real life. Big
shout out,
3i Townie,
for the support. Shout out.
Yeah. If you're listening, thanks for joining us in the game. Thanks for all your
Thanks
videos,
for
and your
fighting
help.
the good fight against the Brotherhood at the very end too.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to give shout out to, I don't know who they are, but there's two people on Reddit, on the Modiphius 2D20 Reddit, that they had these really good compendiums. One guy, Gold Zone 93, made something called Custom Enemies and Equipment, and I used those custom enemies heavily. Another guy it's abbreviated Up and Down 1978 is his username. He made the Wasteland Necessities book, which has a lot of like Trish's weapons and gear that were custom built. Came from there. He also had a lot of NCR Ranger gear, but I looked at the stats and I was like, "There's no way I'm giving Jamie these weapons."
Damn it! I was already so maxed.
Yeah, and this was post railway gun, so I was like, I can't make the same mistake twice.
Like, no freaking way.
No more.
Greatest find ever. Oh, that was last episode. Best thing that came out of that episode.
What if we read the description wrong the first time and then we just rolled with
It's
it?
We
not.
just
I thought it was. I
mean,
don't
it
you
be-
guys remember? I read it 3 times afterwards. I was like, no, this can't be.
And then every time I used it, he's like, I gotta make sure this is right.
Regardless, it became iconic in the game. So, can't ask for anything else.
Even more so when I threw it back at her. That was great.
Oh, yeah.
Man, what a moment.
Speaking of iconic weaponry, this is also where we get the boxing glove that Lance has. Yeah, and we it was so cool the way we just it's like this item, this collector's item, so it's got a signature on it, whose signature, and we came up with
Point
this,
Break.
Point
Point
this
Break.
Maradi Point
Mohad.
Break Hakar. Murad.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Murad,
Yeah.
Murad.
Thank you.
And then
yeah.
we totally let Alex down by not choosing the items he made for
I
us.
made
Yeah, we rejected all of his
so the
presents,
items
basically.
that you guys rejected. By the way, they were the result of that vault test I made you take before we started the game.
Oh yeah, Alex made us take a goat test at the beginning of our recording
Yeah.
to get information about our characters.
And it was basically just a score. It was like a chart. I used a Google survey and then like a scoring chart. So I was like, all right, this many points into this particular skill, and there was I think 5 or 7 different skills that each had different rewards based on who got what. Right, so it's 3. So it's like basically 15 different rewards. And they rejected all of the ones that I put in there.
What
we
were
got
they
all.
again?
It was the magazine, the sword.
Nah.
I have a
Pass.
railway gun and my dad's pipe pistol. No, thank you.
What it really attests to, I think, is at that, because this is episode 8 or something. So at that point, I think our characters are growing. We weren't the people that took that goat exam,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I think that's what happened is we were seeing the dynamism unfold. And so when we got to where you were trying to give us these lovely, beautiful, well thought out gifts, we were like, what the hell is this? I don't need this.
I had it, man. The Chinese officer's sword. I was like, oh, for sure, Xavier's gonna take this one.
I mean,
I
I
don't-
didn't purely
want
for
it.
mechanical purpose, a reason. I had 0 ranks in melee weapons. I'm like, Lance doesn't use these.
He is the weapon.
He literally did Luke Skywalker taking the lightsaber and tossing it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So I'm gonna sort of condense some of the episodes here, because this is the Seven Samurai arc
Yeah, this
that
is the start of
comes
it,
up. Yeah, this is the start of it. Our time in St. Mark's. And so we sort of learn that there's a problem going on with the highwaymen, and that they've been sort of messing with the people here and have attacked them and taken stuff, and that there's an impending attack. We sort of scout the settlement to sort of make preparations. And this is the episode where Alex sort of customizes an NPC for everyone to sort of interact with and have a social interaction with. And Gerry meets Ernest for the first time, who sort of runs their Minutemen, is starting to teach them to shoot and names them the boys, and it's very successful.
It's gender neutral term.
It's the boys. Yeah, there are ladies involved in the boys.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very cool and very Seven Samurai. Felt
so
very
much.
Seven
Yeah,
Samurai.
Yeah.
Lance meets Spenny, who was awesome. And Sonny meets Dustin McBridge, who helps him build traps, which is the setup for probably the most heartbreaking moment that I experienced on the show.
Same.
There was no clue that was going to happen too. It was just a very normal interaction with old man NPC number 1.
He was written in the stars. He was one of those guys who, when I was writing things out, I was like, he's gonna ask them to look for something. So his whole thing was, at this point, when you meet him the first time, he would remember that he was a great adventurer, mercenary, and he's like, I dropped my books. Can you go get them? And you'd go through the ruins of a hospital, right? And there's a couple of fucking crazy surgery bots that are basically the Mr. Handy models, and you kill them. And deep in one of the basements, his books are down there. And when you return with the books, he'd be like, oh, who are you? And that's when it will click.
It blindsided me, man. I was
It was so
crushed.
well thought out, though.
Yeah, I could not believe it. And I was like, I had in that's a little bit later on when we are successful after the St. Mark's battle. But yeah, I remember like I had so many things I wanted that I was interested in Sunny doing, and I was like, that's over. That it's all about this man who is making me cry.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if we had interacted with him when, like, I guess before the Raider attack, he would have been like a quest giver NPC, right? Like you just described. But because Sunny interacted with him as just a person that lived there that didn't have a quest to give, I think that if we came back after a quest and then he's like, who are you again? And we're like, oh, we fell for the bait and switch NPC. Like, I don't think the impact would have been the same now that he was just a person that lived there, and then suddenly you realize he's got like memory problems.
Yeah.
It's just so sad.
Yeah.
He's not an NPC. He's someone.
He's
Yeah.
a person.
I will never forget that, Alex. And I mean that with the most, with love, absolute love. That is seared into my brain forever.
Yeah, I know. This is also the episode. I think it's this one where Jamie joins us. Jamie shows up.
Yeah, Jamie comes back. Jamie comes back in the Seven Samurai arc for the defense of St. Mark's. Yeah, great timing. What was it like coming back?
It was awesome because I loved listening to the show while I was gone. I was excited to jump in, and I didn't really know because I was like an episode or two behind in the feed from what you guys had recorded. So I was like, "Hey guys, what happened now?" And you were like, "Oh, we're in this completely separate place doing this completely separate thing that has nothing to do with what you are up to date with." So that was a little... Because I was going into that session anticipating something completely different than where you guys were at in the story. But Alex made it really easy too, because he gave me pretty much the entire lowdown on Trish. He had an entire backstory basically written out for her. I think the hardest part for me was jumping in. I don't know what episode number it was that I jumped in, but jumping in so many episodes mechanically where you all had a little time with the system, and I was just sort of like, oh, okay, well, at least I'm not first in initiative. So I can like watch you go, and then I can figure out how I need to go.
But weren't you first in
She was first, though.
Usually.
I think for the St. Mark's, the Seven Samurai battle, she was in the middle, I think. But every fight after that, Jamie was number one.
I was in the front. Yeah.
Like we've already talked about it, but yeah, you found Trish real quick, and you really brought something to the story for sure.
It's all that experience in the army and my side gig as a dominatrix.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
And your cool trench coat.
Yeah.
Yes, and obviously the trench coat.
It was just great fun. Like, to do a Seven Samurai thing, and at the end of the day, I don't know if we were 6 or 7, but that doesn't matter. But the effort you put in, Alex, to give us that flavor, just like it paid off so well.
It's one of my favorite tropes. The Seven Samurai thing is just like, I don't want to do it injustice. You know, it has to be big. It has to be huge.
Anything else from that little mini arc that anyone wants to add or talk about before we move on? Or
if Emmett didn't catch those 2 crows and kill them, there would have been more crows showing up.
Yeah, what was the deal with the crows then?
The crows have spies listening and watching whatever the highwaymen do because they hate each other. And they saw that they were going to attack St. Mark's and like, hey, we got to get on there too. Maybe we'll kill a few of them. And so their whole thing was they were going to hang out in there. And if they had survived and the party wipes out the highwaymen and they leave, the crows would come in afterwards. And then the epilogue for St. Mark's would have been completely different.
Oh, wow.
Way to go, Emmett.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing we kind of got out of that was Emmett's sort of like redemption arc.
Yeah. But then we were on like a reform all the NPCs. Like, that was our thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So after St. Mark's, we have episode 12 and 13, which is another just long session that got split up into 2 episodes. We learned that there's a boat called the Way, which is super cool. A little callback there. we get into ghoul combat, and then we have this like on the fly gambling thing that Alex made because we were going too long, so he just sort of like on the fly made it. And by the way, no idea.
Great.
Had no idea that was the case.
Yeah, it's not that you were going long, it's that I, in my head, for some reason, especially around these last episodes, I'm like, okay, I'm planning it out, and by the time we get into it, I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna take fucking 4 hours. Like, just based off what I have in front of me, right? Nothing from you guys. You guys are, playing a game, going at the speed that we normally go to. It's just me being nuts and going like, all right, this is gonna happen, then they gotta get to this set piece and put that in there. So yeah, definitely my fault with pacing.
On to the next episode. This one starts with a Gerry flashback. What's interesting about this one is because the previous episodes got split up, I texted Alex and I was like, hey, I'm splitting up these episodes, but we need like something to get into it. Like, can you do another flashback? And he was like, I'm on it. I got it. And he was going to make it a Gerry flashback. And so that was kind of born out of like, we needed something to fill for the show. But it became something kind of important. Do you want to like talk a little bit about that?
I think it's revealed later on that like everyone in Holler Lake is Cause. Every single person who lives there, it's a Cause member. And so the entire town is like, it's fake. It has this facade of like, oh, we're welcome. It's the first settlement people see when they're coming into the Evergreen from the northern side. So it's like a major checkpoint. And I wanted to show that like later on when it's revealed that the Cause have in the shadows a lot of influence too. I wanted to drive that home. But for this particular flashback, the main point was even a survivalist like Gerry needs help every now and then, and also that the wasteland itself is still extremely dangerous, even in civilized or cultivated lands.
No, I really liked it. Because I came into this one, it wasn't going to be improv. There was a script that I was reading, and then we had to do some screen takes.
Oh yeah.
And I remember both of you going, because you guys were like, okay, could you do it like her leg has gotten hurt, and then like this, and then you're like, you should tell John that you're okay with what you're doing.
Oh yeah, because you're screaming in pain.
Ian got into like director mode too. He's like, okay, can you take it and like think of it that you're doing this, or can you do it with a little more oomph? And I was like,
one more, yeah, one more, but with more pain.
Yeah, it really was.
No, that was fun, and that was like not. I think what was interesting is it became integral to the story about the Cause a little bit, even though we didn't know it at the time.
I think I gave everyone like a page or something, or like a more descriptive backstory after we got the points refined out. It was basically all the points you made, and then I refined them into like a 2-paragraph or something like that. And I had 2 sets for Gerry. I had the one that I gave her, and I had the one that I kept for myself, where it says the 2 people that she meets, the woman and her husband, are basically Cause agents, and the town that she went, Holler Lake itself, is a Cause stronghold. And so I was like, I got to keep that because I might forget. Because I wasn't sure if we'd ever get to Holler Lake. I thought you might catch up with V and Marcos before they even got there. So I was like, I need to keep this.
There was a chance.
Oh, 1,000%.
Wow.
Oh.
Because it felt so natural that we'd meet them in the Brotherhood prison by Holler Lake. It just felt so natural.
This is the episode that we kind of go off the rails like a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the party splits. Like we've got Trish and Sunny in the sewers who meet Jake, who's like this guy who hiding out from super mutants, like in the sewers. Gerry and Lance like go off on the boat to try and get away from a super mutant attack that happens. Like it all goes wild, and then they all get taken out by a big pink gooey tendril mass, and we're all like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, at that point I still hadn't made the connection at all that it was related to the Wailing Wall. I was like, oh cool, like a big octopus monster. Like,
I hadn't
interesting.
either.
Yeah, I think I kind of fucked up with that because I was like, my main goal is like, I need them to get back to Ramshackle and to go north. I need them to go north. and then the tentacle monster being there, and then you guys like, well, we're not going in there. I was like, I fucked that up. Yeah, because then after this, it's like, hey, let's go look for a bridge. Maybe we can go somewhere else.
Oh yeah, yeah. We go meet a Deathclaw. We're like looking to loot an abandoned Brotherhood outpost, and just like
I'm still glad we went to that Brotherhood outpost, because the mystery of why there were suddenly all these super mutants walking north, although it was kind of unrelated, it still was related, because that was one of the pieces of the puzzle we needed to put everything together. Brotherhood moved in a panic north, and we're like, okay, why? And like trying to figure all of that as we moved up north, up to the point where we get to their outpost, and they're like, well, there's room for 2 vertibirds, but there's only 1. Like, it all clicked at that point. I was like, great, I'm glad we went to that Deathclaw bridge.
Yeah, it helped. It was really good environmental storytelling. Well, in the next episode, we're back on track. Finally, we meet the pink tentacle mass, or part of it, which is like a humanoid, telepathically speaking part of the Wailing Wall called a Wailing One. That was super cool, Alex.
I loved it. I loved it so much.
The reveal of the tentacles threw me for a loop too, because I was like, oh, this is a different new thing. Here's a new thing. And then when the tentacle reveal, it was like, oh, of course.
That's that.
And then you described that it was like fleshy gum textured. I'm like, oh, like a third reveal.
Yeah, for a moment, I'm like, ooh, we can make it a friend. It's trying to reason with us.
But yeah, where did you pull that from? Where were you holding that in your pocket from the beginning, or were you inspired by something?
The Wailing Ones is a mixture of different sources. Like, one obviously is the Cthulhu Lovecraftian type stuff, right? But also another thing is, I think around the time I started coming up with the concept of the Wailing One, like the psychic powered, this 7-8 foot tall creature, was around the time I started getting into looking into like the Berserk stuff. It just happened to catch a clip of that Eclipse arc scene where they're in the what's essentially hell, or whatever the hell it is, and then everyone just starts getting massacred. So I had seen that scene, and it just filled me with this weird. It's like a feeling you get when you watch a horror movie and you love being scared. Same thing I get when I watch like really freaky ass cartoons or like animated films. It's just like, oh my god, that's so horrific. It's that I tried to make a creature or a character that gives that feeling of like overpoweredness, that like it has abilities and rationale that don't translate to what we understand, you know. And so the Wailing One was this. It's an extension of the wall itself, where it's seeking to just take everything, and it doesn't care about what the other person that it's taking, or the creature it's taking, doesn't care what it thinks or what it feels. It only cares about being able to feel those things in itself. And so I tried to encapsulate that with this guy. Also the fact that it's like, you know, it's got pieces of all these other creatures that it's eaten already. So some super mutants, some First Hill Sect people,
all these different voices. Yeah,
some random people, the Wastelanders. It was kind of a mixture of all that, but I think ultimately it came from like Lovecraftian horror. It was a really, really big influence on this one. Anything that has to do with like your ability to lose sentience, like someone who's in danger of losing the ability of sentience, I think that's really what inspired me.
Well, it's super cool and super memorable.
I was super like scared for Jake. Like when Jake got
bored up.
I'm like, oh, how's that gonna mechanically work for Jake?
We can't redeem him if he's being eaten.
What are we gonna do?
This is the second redemption character. Right? Yeah.
When did you, or unless you were, the Wailing One was already planned to be there, but I know you mentioned at some point that because we went so far away from the Wailing Wall and we'd never see it, you were like, well, it's all connected. The sewers are all connected. Maybe you'll see it someday. Did you plan on bringing back the Wailing Wall
kind of
a long time ago, or towards the end, before there was no time left?
I knew I wanted it to be able to access the sewers as like a route, and I knew I wanted him to pop out at some point again. Like that last fight where it shows up, it would have showed up there regardless, and it would have been an even weirder moment for all of you because you'd been like, "What the fuck is this?" Like
because we had never seen it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so when you guys got to Ramshackle, and I was aware that okay, they're gonna go to WPF, they're going to meet Jake. but it's up to them if they choose to use him or not, or if they decide to go to the power plant. So if you'd gone through the power plant, there was a whole nother encounter with a couple more super mutants. And there's no Jake, and there's no Wailing One, because you're going to skip the zoo entirely. He would still be in the zoo, hiding and kind of eating the mutated creatures, but that's about the extent of what he would do. But the Wailing Wall itself would show up like it did in the final battle.
So it was gonna come back in some form.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it did, because it's a super cool idea. And
It was super.
Yeah.
we get to the Woodland Protection Force. Yeah, Woodland Protection Force. We have another bit of a shopping episode a little bit as we sort of like prepare, and we touch very briefly on modding. That's a mechanic that you can have in the game, which was actually a lot of fun. When we have those mechanical things, I tend to like take that stuff out of the show, but it like turned into like a bunch of, mostly like Lance like sort of like touching base with everyone and just like having these kind of brief but fun interactions. Yeah,
It was really playful. Yeah, that was fun. Those nice little moments. And the dice roll helped like make it funnier.
Yeah, and I think that's the first time that we meet Santiago too, who is a really interesting character, because when you pitched it in the game, it was like, oh, it's like Sunny, but like another Sunny is kind of is what you said. So I think what we were all expecting was a little bit of a sly, cunning, like fast talker, and he was not that at all. Like,
yeah, Santiago is like a mixture of the Danny Trejo ghoul, right? But with the
oh yeah, Raul. Is it Raul?
Yeah, Raul.
I love Raul.
I love Raul too.
He's my guy.
He's my favorite. But it's more like it's the darker side of that, where it's like, okay, whereas Sunny learned the value of community because other survivors trusted him early on, Santiago was hunted, and that's kind of gave him that kind of rough exterior and why he was so rude right in the beginning.
He warmed up though.
Yeah, he totally did. I like having that dichotomy, because I think Sunny probably has a lot of those similar experiences, and to see them turn out differently, I think was really interesting. We get into the finale, and this is the first time that we actually like see Marcos and Olivia, we hear them and we interact with them. I think this is something that was kind of unspoken between all of us, but we all came to understand as we were playing the game and telling the story, is like, I think all of us had kind of resigned that we weren't bringing them back. We were just like gonna see if they were alive and like relay messages, basically, is kind of all. And I don't know when that happened, but
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of learning the world and the story. We kind of got to understand where Marcos and V were at.
And why they were running, and how like they couldn't come back, because then Marcos would probably be killed. But I'm gonna be honest, there was a point where I was like, okay, when is it too much to look for these people? We were just asked to like find information about them. Like, at what point is it like, okay, well, we really, really, really tried.
Like, this was the limit. If they weren't there, I think we would have just quit.
yeah,
Abandoned mission.
yeah. I mean, we end up just like saying goodbye to them, basically, and they're like, buy us some time. And then this incredible battle happens. It feels like, I mean, if you haven't heard the episode, why are you listening to this?
Right?
Three hours in.
Yeah. But you know what happens.
Weird place to start. Like,
Yeah, very weird place
Yeah.
to start. Go back at least.
If you're joining us now.
But yeah, my goodness, man. And Alex, I tip my hat to you, because it felt like immediately it felt like the battle at Hoover Dam, where there's just like everything, every faction that you've touched like comes in, it can be involved, and like everything that we had done for Wheel or Woe, was like there and happened. And that felt really Fallout-y to me. I was like, oh, we are doing the Battle of Hoover Dam right now.
Yeah, for sure. Drew a lot of inspiration from that one, for sure. But Also, certain things were set up in case things were going bad for you. Like all those factions from your past coming by, specifically Island Town and the Rats and the Paradise Falls Mercs or the Marksmans were specifically there in case the Wailing Wall got too close, in case the Deathclaw got too close, started doing too much damage, or the Cause started doing, if one side basically overtook the other. That's what they were there for.
We had talked about like feeling okay with whatever outcome happened, like I think it's one of those instances where if any one of our characters had gone down or been taken out in that battle, I think that would have been such a fitting ending. It would have been sad, but it would have felt earned,
Yeah, good battle to die in. You were mentioning, Alex, like other possibilities for Marcos and V along the way. Like, are there any big potential plot points that you were thinking for us that we completely avoided?
Yeah, so
or like the top two,
the factory, the power plant. When you reach Ramshackle, the power plant was like a direct route across to WPF. Like you'd go through it, and you could be at WPF within a shorter amount of time than when you went through the sewers. But there's more dangers up there. You would have probably run into them if you guys were fast and, just straight up run and gun through the super mutants. You probably would have run into them at WPF right as they're stealing the boat to go across the waters. So that was a big one. Another point, well, not more of a point, but like if you hadn't met them in the jail cells, but that you get out of the Brotherhood outpost and you see them, you would have seen them pass through the outpost in some manner, and you would have had to chase them down. They would not know who you are because you didn't have the opportunity to talk with them. So they would have run from you as they've been running from everybody else. And I had basically a second picturesque scene that didn't involve it involved a battle, but not one on that scale, where they were basically like at the precipice of a cliff or a precipice of an elevated natural walkway that led them into outside of the Evergreen, and you guys were closing in on them, and you had to make a choice of letting them leave or saying no, you have to come with us. And letting them leave gives you the same outcome as like what you guys have now. Forcing them to come back with you causes Marcos to attack you guys as like a last ditch effort. And in this scenario, he's not very strong. He's a settler NPC, not great. But the scenario in which you let them go from this particular point means you are fighting against waves of enemies on a very narrow. It's basically a 2-zone combat. Zone 1 is you guys on the edge of a cliff. Zone 2 is the cliff or the edge of the elevated land where they're coming up from, which is like woods and boulders. So they have cover, and you guys have like almost no cover. It's basically like a last stand.
Yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been cool too.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, good.
Congratulations and thank you. That was a wonderful,
I would love
wonderful
the
campaign.
opportunity to do a one shot in this world with you all again because it was so much fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Combat night.
Combat night. Come save me. Come save Lance.
Thank you all for sending your questions in. Thank you all for being a part of this campaign, giving us your time and your energy and playing. And Alex, thank you again so much for putting this all together. This has been incredible and memorable. And I do want to revisit it at some point. I don't know how, but there's so much that you've told that we didn't get to experience. It would be a shame not to do anything with it.
Well, we're moving east next time, right?
I guess some things never change.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Respect the Crit's Wasteland Adventure, Fallout Evergreen. If you like what you heard, please consider supporting us by giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you use to listen. It's easy, free, helps other people learn about the show, and we love to read your feedback. For more information about the show, visit @RespectTheCrit on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or come chat with us in our official Discord server. Gerry is played by Susan Spenader, who you can find on Instagram @SuzLalouz. Lance Burnett is played by Xavier Trudeau-Deschênes, who can be found on Twitter @XavierTD. Trish is played by Jamie Lee-Bonés, who you can find on Instagram @JamieLee.Bones. Sunny Takase is played by me, your host, Ian Duncan, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram @IDunks. Our guest GM for this game is Alex Herrera, who you can find on Twitter @AE Herrera or on his Twitch channel, WadeWolf10. The original music in this episode is provided with license or permission by a variety of talented artists whose info and credits can be found in the episode notes. Please support them by visiting their platforms to hear more of their work and tell them how much you like their music in our show. Our outro song is Some Things Never Change by Gavin Dunn. You can hear more of his work on Bandcamp and YouTube at Miracle of Sound. The Fallout 2D20 RPG system is licensed by Bethesda and published by Modiphius Entertainment. Special thanks to our friends at Modiphius. You can learn more and grab your own copy of the official Fallout RPG by visiting modiphius.net/respectthecrit. Special thanks to the team at Fallout Cascadia for use of their music. You can learn more about this incredible, ambitious Fallout 4 mod at falloutcascadia.com. And remember, whatever the system, whether it's a miss or a hit, you always gotta respect the crit. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the wasteland.
Future Ian, sorry if you hear like ASMR scratching on my mic. I was getting dust off of the mic cover. This part.
Thank you.
It got a lot of dust for some reason. I don't know what to do about it.
That warning will do me no good because you gave it to me afterwards.
After the fact? Yeah.
So he would have already experienced it.
So present Ian, remember that in the future.
I mean, it's not like aggressive scratching. It's just like gentle, swiping.
Little taps.
Little swipes. Yeah.
Man, I can't. I
You get the
can't
tingles,
stand.
the ASMR tingles.
No.
I just get irritated.